Hello and good afternoon, CTS266 Section 840 students for the Spring 2016 semester at Anne Arundel Community College. This is the CCNP Switch course from the Cisco Networking Academy, and this afternoon's video tutorial is going to be our last and final challenge activity for the spring semester. So this is it with respect to the Cisco Learning Labs. And this is all about controlling network access with port security. And we're going to go above and beyond what they're asking for here. I know a lot of you are always curious, well, how do you do things in a production environment? And so we're going to go a little deeper dive into, and I'm actually going to give you my default port configuration that I put on newly deployed switches for ports that are not being used. And again, you'll see a wide range of settings in there, and again, all highly recommended, and some settings that I've collected sort of over the years, and I'll be more than happy to share that with you today. So let's take a look at our scenario here with port security. So it's Friday afternoon, and Dwayne, who has completely destroyed our environment before, is coming to us in a hurry. There's going to be a security audit done, and we've got until Monday to ensure that the network follows the recommended security practices as closely as possible. So Dwayne quickly listed for you the key security considerations. So we've got CDP, and remember the Cisco Discovery Protocol, that is Cisco proprietary. Do you remember the open standard, what's the word I'm looking for, not variant, yeah, the open standard variant, I guess, of CDP. And exactly, it's LLDP, right? Link Layer Discovery Protocol. So we're going to be shutting down CDP on any interfaces that face outside of our environment, because we don't want to be sharing that sensitive information outside the environment. Port security access should be restricted to currently connected in devices. We're going to be taking a look at enable passwords, VTY and security console passwords, secure remote access. We're going to put up a banner message here, warning for unauthorized users. Unused ports, so VLAN 199 is designated for our unused ports, and we're going to shut that down or suspend it, depending on whether or not we're using VTP. Spanning tree protocol on the end devices, so we're going to be looking definitely at BPDU guard, and we're also going to go with root guard on there as well, since they're access-facing ports. And then the web protocol, so we're going to be shutting down the HTTP and as well as the HTTPS protocol. All right, so let's go ahead and dive in here. We'll take these in turn. So we'll start at the top, CDP, Cisco Discovery Protocol. When we take a look at our environment here, one of the things that we should see immediately is that we have a single interface that is facing outside of our network, and that interface is right here. Ethernet 00, and we'll confirm this, that's going to be our connection to the service provider, whoever that may be, and out to the internet. So it's okay if we've got CDP running here and here, because those are inward facing ports, and so it's okay if we're sharing information between the devices that are inside the network. However, devices or I should say ports that are facing outside the network, we want to make sure that CDP is not sharing critical information about this R1 node, and especially because that's our edge router. So let's clear the screen here, and let's drop into router 1, and we'll go from user exec into privilege exec, and what do we have? Is it C1SCO? And I did not catch the password. I didn't see that in the scenario, so let's check here real quick. And we may actually have to pull up, let's go up here to the top, the job aids. Let's see if it gives us the password here. All right, so C1SC0, admin C1SC0. So they've got these things locked down. So we're going, oops, sorry, we're going to say C1SC0. SC0, and that should, there we go. All right, so it gets us in. So let's say show CDP neighbor. So right now we see DSW1 and DSW2, but if I were to say show run and we take a look at the interfaces here, you can see that our internet-facing interface, which is this 209.165.2011. It's a /30, so it's a point-to-point link here. So we've got, and I don't mean point-to-point in the sense it's a serial link. I just mean there's only two devices, two usable IPs in that IP space that can be used. So it doesn't appear that CDP is shut down. So let's make that happen. Let's get into global config and say interface Ethernet 00, and we're going to say no CDP enable. Now, no CDP enable, that's what I would put at the interface level. If I wanted to disable CDP throughout the environment, I could say no CDP and it's run, right? So no CDP run. But this is going to turn CDP off for the entire switch. And depending on the type of environment you're in, that may be a consideration. However, in the scenario that we've got here, we're simply looking at making sure that that CDP information does not get pushed out to the internet-facing connection. And so we did that with that no CDP enable command. Remember, you can do it per interface or you can do it globally. And we could even disable it globally and then go into the interface Ethernet 00 and say CDP enable. So it's, you can do it two ways, right? We can disable it globally and then enable it on the interfaces we want it to run, or we can leave it enabled globally like it is by default and then go into the interfaces and disable it on the interfaces we don't want it to run on. So again, you've got some flexibility there as to how you're going to deal with CDP. So let's say do show run interface Ethernet 00, and there we go, no CDP enable. So do show CDP neighbor detail. Sorry about that. And we can still see that we just see those two devices, DSW1, so CDP is still running on those other interfaces. All right, so that takes care of the CDP requirement. Let me actually pull the scenario back up here. All right, there we go, Web protocol if we need to test. So what do we have up next? So port security. So access should be restricted to currently connected end devices. So we take a look here. We've got PC1, PC2, PC3, and PC4. So Ethernet 02 and 03, and then Ethernet 11 and 12 on this guy down here on this layer 2 switch, and then we've got these guys directly terminated into our distribution layer switches. And so here's where we're going to go a little above and beyond what is required here in this exercise. So let's go into enable mode again, C1 CS0. So if I were to say show run interface Ethernet 02, you can see that ironically we've already got spanning tree port fast and a BPDU guard is enabled. However, no port security is enabled. So let's make that happen. And we're going to do that for Ethernet 02 and 03. So we're going to say interface range Ethernet 02 3. All right, so remember the first command that we need to have in order to activate port security is switch port security. Without this command, if I were to put the following command in, MAC address sticky, and hit enter, that does not enable port security on the port. Now, it certainly places, it's a placeholder so that when I do enter switch port security by itself and hit return, that will take effect. But right now, if I said do show port security, take a look. We've got nothing, right? There are no secure ports because, again, you have to run the switch port security command by itself on the port that you wish to have port security enabled. And same goes for do show run interface Ethernet 02. You can see that we've got switch port security MAC address sticky, but yet it hasn't learned any MAC address here, right? So you can clearly see that it's switch port security really isn't enabled right now. And so let's go ahead and make that happen. So switch port security, you can see we've got aging if we wanted to do aging commands. I can set the MAC address with the MAC address command, maximum, how many MAC addresses do we want to allow on this port, and then the violation, right? Remember, protect, restrict, and shut down, and those are in order from least restrictive to most restrictive. So we're going to say switch port security by itself, and remember, the default, how many MAC addresses allowed if I don't enter in, if I don't say switch port security, sorry, maximum, question mark, if I don't indicate how many addresses are allowed, how many are allowed? Exactly. The default is 1. And to prove that, when I say switch port security maximum 1, and then I say do show run interface Ethernet 02, take a look. It doesn't have the output there for switch port security maximum 1. And the reason for that is because that's the default. That is the default setting here on the Cisco switches. So we've got MAC address sticky. Now port security is enabled, and we know that because we can see that we've picked up a sticky address, right? So the address that was plugged in, the MAC address that was present on this port Ethernet 02, and there's Ethernet 03, respectively for PC1 and PC2, I believe. Let me double check. Yeah, PC1 and PC2. So now if I save my configuration and say write mem, those addresses, those sticky learned addresses that show up on those show run int commands, those are going to be persistent across switch reloads, which means if I were to reload this switch right now, that when it came back up, those same sticky addresses that we see right here for both of the ports, those would be the same sticky MACs when the switch came back from a reload. Now, we also see here with the switch port secure, or show switch port security, you can see we now have our secure ports listed out because we issued the switch port security command. You can see max secure addresses is 1. The current addresses is 1 because there's one address that's on there. No violations have occurred. And what is the default action? Exactly. The default action is to shut down. In other words, we will see this port transition to an air disable state. And then it will take administrator intervention to go in there and say shut, no shut, to bring the port back online. Because we're not actually configuring this to time out and then try to bring the port back online. And again, in the environments that I've worked in, if you have a port security violation in an enterprise environment where you've got servers that are plugged in, where you're not anticipating a different MAC address to show up on a port, I would highly recommend that you shut that port down and you do not allow that port to try to come back online at a later time. That the administrator must stop what they're doing and take a look to see what's going on. All right, so let's go ahead and clear our screen there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you, and we'll add some of these things in here to our port because it's asked us to do some spanning tree work. So this is the default port configuration, and this is just happens to be off the 3750X, right? Interface gig 101. So the first thing I do is I always like to highlight the port with a description, telling you not to use the port's been shut down, who shut the port down, and the date that that port was shut down. So that if someone has a question about something that's in here, they can look and say, oh, let me go check with Travis to see why on the 1st of January of this year did he shut down gig 101, and maybe this doesn't make sense to them. They've got some questions. So let's walk through this real quickly here because this would be of great benefit in an environment where you're trying to lock down unused ports if you've got multiple people with access to your hardware. So the first thing we do is we set the switch port access to VLAN 999, and that is our parking lot, what I like to call the parking lot VLAN, which is a VLAN that is either shut down or suspended, That way, if the no shut command happened to be entered, you're going to end up as an access port in a shutdown or suspended VLAN where no traffic is allowed to transit. And we'll talk about some of these other things. It's kind of defense in depth on the port here. The next setting is I hard code all ports to be switch port trunk incap.1q, and then I also put them in that same shutdown or suspended VLAN for their native VLAN. And then I allow no VLANs over the trunk port. Now remember, we're talking about a port here that is not being used. So let's say you've got a switch installed in your data center and you have available ports that are not in use. And what we're talking about here is the default settings, right? Or I shouldn't say the default settings. The settings that I use as defaults to protect my ports, my unused open ports, from someone simply plugging in and causing a catastrophic event. So you can see here I say switch port mode access. Now one of the common questions I get is, well, wait a second. Why do you have 3 trunk port commands here, but then you've got this switch port access VLAN 999, switch port mode access, and then you say switch port no negotiate. So there's access mode configuration commands here, and there are also trunk port configuration commands here. And the bottom line is this: when you say switch port mode access, that overrides the trunk port configuration commands. And this command right here will tell the switch port you are now an access port. And that is irrespective of trunk port commands that may be here. We can still leave these commands here, right? And it's a good thing to leave them here in case someone comes in and they say, you know, no switch port mode access. So, and no switch port access VLAN 999, because you don't know what a bad actor may do. But again, the switch port mode access command, when entered on the port, will override and turn this port into an access port, at which point our access mode commands kick in. So we still put on here, we turn DTP off, switch port no negotiate. We use switch port MAC address, or switch port security, MAC address sticky, and switch port security. Again, we have to have this command here or else it does not activate switch port security, or port security doesn't get activated. Now, we've seen these 3 commands before. Or I should say these 5 commands right here we've seen before. And take a look at the level. And so this is kind of where we get into the defense in depth, right? An administrator accidentally no shuts the port and maybe changes the access VLAN to a live VLAN, and so that this port would be legitimate. So what these 3 commands right here do, look at the level we set them at, 0. So no broadcast traffic, no multicast traffic, and no unicast traffic is allowed on the port. In other words, what's going to happen when the first frame is received or the first packets start trying to flow through this interface? Exactly. We've covered all of our bases here. The port, the action will shut the port down, right? Whoops. I'm trying to draw an arrow there. So the port will shut down. So it's defense in depth. Maybe administrator, mistakenly gets by this 999 on the switch port access VLAN and says no shut and forgets to then shut the port down and put it back into the parking lot VLAN. You're covered here, and the action is trapped. It's going to send an SNMP alert or SNMP message to hopefully your network management system, SolarWinds, What's Up Gold, whatever the case may be. And so you might be asking yourself, well, wait a second, this seems like total overkill. And you can certainly make the argument that it might be. However, all of these commands right here, this setup right here, the storm control activity on unused ports, you're making 100% sure that the individual that's making a configuration change on this port is doing so intentionally, right? Because Yeah, it's possible. Maybe somebody gets, says no shut on the port mistakenly and changes the VLAN. However, to do no storm control broadcast level, no storm control multicast, no storm control unicast, and maybe to pull these commands off, this is highly irregular that someone would accidentally pull these things off, right? Or change the config so much so that all of the storm control commands are off of here. There's no question that that is an intentional, deliberate act to remove the controls off of an unused port. And when we talk about change control, making sure that you don't have people who are just kind of going in, the cowboy, the renegade, the loose cannon, going in, making changes to your environment and putting things on your network that aren't supposed to be there. And so that is what all 5 of these storm control commands are for, is that if they mistakenly move past the shutdown command and the switch port access command, that you've got some backup here with the storm control commands. So then we see what we just did on Ethernet 00 on router 1, no CDP enable. Again, I don't want any CDP information being given out on a port that's not supposed to be in use. And then we go spanning tree port fast, BPDU guard, and these are access facing ports. So spanning tree guard root, because I should not see a superior BPDU show up on an access port that's supposed to have a host connected to it. So again, a lot going on here, but when you break it down into simple blocks, it makes great sense, right? So here's our port security commands. Here's the DTP command to turn DTP off. Here are the access commands, right, that run through here. Here are my trunk port commands. And again, these are all on ports that are not being used, to protect you from someone accidentally plugging something in. And I've actually had this happen where someone plugged in an IBM VIO, internal VIO server that has this internal switch, and caused an epic spanning tree error because they had actually unplugged 2 servers that had been decommissioned and plugged in their connections to do some testing. So it happens, right? So this is definitely well worth your time to really lock your environment down. So let me transition back now. And I apologize, went off. But again, very, very important here, right? If you want to do a screenshot, now is the time to do it. We're going to jump back. All right. So we're back here on switch 1. We did the switch port security. And let's do C1 SC0. So we'll go in the global config here, interface range Ethernet 02 to 3. Let me double check that. Make sure we're impacting the right ports. Yep, 0203. And so now we're going to kind of go ahead and extend the command set out. So do show run interface Ethernet 02. So that's what the port looks like right now. Let's add in not switch port. We're going to do spanning tree. So let's say spanning tree guard root, because these are host facing ports. We should not be getting superior BPDUs on host facing ports. Now, obviously, these ports are being used. So the storm control commands aren't in play here because we don't want to have the port get shut down because it is legitimately being used. So if we take a quick, look back here, we've got our BPD guard enable, and let's go ahead and put port fast is already on there, I believe. Yeah, so port fast is already on there. We wouldn't use our storm control, right? Because again, that's to keep the port from being functional. We wouldn't use shutdown. Let's go ahead and add in our trunk port configuration, and we'll hard code it. So we'll just say switch port trunk incap.1q, and then a switch port no negotiate. Oh, that's right. The IOU does not have that switch port no negotiate. At least it doesn't appear to be there. We've run into this before. So it appears maybe DTP is not running. So switch port, trunk, native, VLAN, and they said 199 is our VLAN to use. So we'll go ahead and say VLAN 199, and let's take a look and make sure that that is about it. So the native, incap, We've got everything else set up. So again, we'll say do show run interface Ethernet 02, right? And there we go. We make sure that if for some reason someone accidentally made this a trunk port, that it's going to be inside this VLAN. VLAN 99, do show VLAN brief, or 199. And I don't see 199 here. We may end up creating that VLAN later. Let's go ahead and say VLAN 199, and then we're going to say state, whoops, sorry, and then shutdown, and then if we did VTP, we would say state suspend, do show VLAN brief. Actually, it's not going to show up yet. Let's say name, and I'll call it parking lot. And then end. We got to get out of that configuration mode. Show VLAN brief. And now we've got it, and there it is, suspended and shut down, right? And that's what we want. We don't want any traffic for something in the parking lot VLAN to be used. All right. So now let's go ahead and throw a right mem in there. Let's take a look at our diagram here. Let's hit up switch DSW2, and let's knock out the same thing, CISCO. And we're going to say, we'll say show run here. Take a look at the ports that we've got right now. So you can see we've got sort of less of a configuration here on Ethernet 1.1. There we go, 1.1 and 1.2. And they actually have BPDU filter on their side. Now, remember, and that just means that spanning tree is not running, because remember what happens when you have BPDU filter and BPDU guard enabled on the same port. What takes precedence? Exactly. BPDU filter is going to take precedence. And for an access-facing port, it's probably more appropriate to have BPDU guard, because again, BPDU filter is basically just not running spanning tree on that port. So let's get into global config, interface range, Ethernet 1.1 to 1.2. So let's add spanning tree, and let's actually say we're going to pull BPDU filter off of there. So we'll say no spanning tree, BPDU filter enable, and we're going to say spanning tree BPDU, or sorry, guard root is what we want. Guard root. So we've got that on there. Let's go ahead. There's no port security, so switch port, port security, MAC address sticky, and then switch port, port security to enable it. So now when I say do show run interface Ethernet 1.1, you can see we've picked up the MAC address. We've got our port fast, our BPDU guard enable, and our guard root all ready to go. So let's go ahead and say end and issue a write mem. Okay, let me refer back here to our scenario. So we took care of the port security. Now let's go ahead and knock out the enable passwords. So, and we're going to set it. Looks like we're going to end up setting it here, because let's see if we've got it. Show run. So there is an enable secret here, right? And you can see that right there. And so this is interesting. They want us to secure this, because this is secure. Maybe they're anticipating. Let me take a look. Are they anticipating we change it? Enable password. All right, so let's do this. Let's go into global config, and we're going to say no enable password. And then we'll just simply say enable password. And we'll throw in, or not password, I'm sorry, enable secret. What are we doing here? Enable secret. And it's funny because it's already been done. So we definitely want to use password type 4 with the SHA-256. And if I'm not mistaken, I could have sworn I saw something saying that that has been deprecated, the type 4, because I believe maybe it's the type 4 that was compromised. So yeah, so we'll stick with 5. And actually, I believe it's going to be type 5 by default. So then we'll put the password in C1SCO, and maybe that's what they're looking for. Let's see what we've got now. Do show, and maybe that was it. No, it still goes type 4 by default. Huh. No enable secret, or no enable, yeah, no enable secret. And then let's do enable secret and we're going to use 5. Oh, but it wants an encrypted string, so that's not going to work. All right. So exact level password, secret level. No. Okay, so we'll leave it there. I'm not sure that that's what they want us to do here on this. So, but we'll go ahead and make the rounds here, and let's hit up DSW1 as well. Say C1SCO and C1SCO. There we go. Show run. Ah, okay. So I see what we're looking at here. So when we looked, we didn't have to do anything to DSW2. That was correct. If I take a look at switch 1, show run, and that is going to be correct. I see what they're getting at here. So what they're asking us to do is investigate the passwords. You can clearly see that this is a type 7 password. Very easy to crack a type 7 password. So we'll say no enable password. And that should be it. And then we'll come back with enable secret. And then we'll say C1SC0. There we go. All right. So that knocks that out. Let's take a look at the next one. So we did the enable password. So VTY and console passwords. So let's take a look here at, since we're on DSW1, so we'll say show run. We'll get to the end here. So we've got logging synchronous. We do have password set now. Type 7 is the best we're going to be able to do here on the lines, on the VTY, the aux lines, and the console line. So we're good there. We're good on the aux lines, the VTY lines. So the login is local. So we're probably not going to set a password on that, on the VTY lines. Let's say do show run. And we'll cruise down here. So again, yeah, password on the aux line, the console line, but not the VTY lines. And then on the switch, show run. And we'll do a quick comparison here. Aha. So when you take a look here, right, is the password encrypted? Or I shouldn't say encrypted. Is it hashed or difficult to figure out what it is? It's not. So for this, what would we do? Exactly. Service password encryption. And then I say do show run. And we'll get down to the bottom here, and we can see that now we've got a little additional security. So, and again, remember that Cisco is very upfront about this. There's a document where they say that the Type 7 passwords, they're not there so that it's an uncrackable password that, you know, the best hacker's not going to be able to figure out. You can cut and paste this into a multitude of websites, cut and paste the Type 7 hash into a multitude of websites, and it'll decrypt it for you within seconds. And so again, that's not what this is for. What this is for is sort of the over-the-shoulder, someone walking by and they look at that. It's going to be a little difficult to remember that random string and that random hash there. So definitely not a password type that's never going to be cracked. It's just there to prevent somebody from looking over your shoulder and seeing, you know, oh, hey, look, I see what's going on over there. I know the password. All right, so we've got the enable passwords are taken care of, VTY and console. So secure remote access. So that's going to be our VTY lines. And so let's take a look here. We'll start out on switch 1, transport input SSH. So we're good there. Let's take a look on DSW2. Transport input SSH, and how about DSW1? We've got transport input SSH. So across all of the devices, and let me check here, CISC0. Forgot about our router. And the router has transport input telnet. So let's get into global config. Oops, sorry. We're going to say line VTY 0 through 4. And no transport input telnet. No transport input. Let's just do that. And then we'll say transport input SSH. There we go. Do show run. Begin at VTY. So there we go. Transport input SSH. And so that's what we're looking for. So that matches across the board. Warnings for unauthorized users. And so this is going to be our banner message, right? So if we were to say, and actually we should be able to do show run include banner. So there we've got our banner right there, and it says unauthorized activities will be grounds for prosecution. So let's check all these guys. Do show run include banner, right? So it's good there. DSW1 show run include banner. And then on router 1, do show run include banner. And there is no banner. So let's go ahead and say banner. And then you can put any kind of a character, something that you're going to use to delimit the line. So I'll do banner at, and as I hit enter, that at character, so I'm going to put in, you know, we'll just type in something crazy here, right? And I can go multiple lines with my message, right? I can even, you know, put some nice characters in here to try to box it off. And then put a message in here and then box it off. And as long as I don't enter the at sign on a line by itself, we're good. So when I'm done and I'm happy with my message, I put the at sign and hit enter. So do show run include banner. And it's showing that Control C. So hold on 1 second here. So I'm wondering if it did not like the use of the at sign, but that should have been it. So let's try something here. Let's say, first let's save our config. Right mem, and then exit. All right, there we go. So the banner is in play. And so that's how you check to see if your banner is actually functional. All right, so that takes care of the banner. Let's step over here. Warnings for unauthorized users. So unused ports. So for unused ports, VLAN 199 is designated. And we already took care of the spanning tree. So we've got the unused ports left and the web protocol left. So let's come back over here. So unused ports. So 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 2, and 0, 3. So let's take a look at switch 1 first here and say do show run, or wait, do show IP interface brief and see how many, whoa. We have quite a few ports that aren't being used. All right, so we've got 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3. So 1, 0 to 1, 3, 2, 0 to 2. Boy, there are a lot of ports not being used here. So let's go ahead and knock this out. Let me say do show run first and make sure that this is not already done. So it looks like it's already done here. Or actually, I'm sorry, it's not. There we go. So these are the ports here. You see there's switch port mode access. And all of those ports are not being used. So let's do this. We're going to say interface range. Ethernet 10 to excuse me, 10 to 3. Ethernet 20 to 3. Ethernet 30 to 3. Oops, sorry. Ethernet 30 to 3. Ethernet 40 to 3. And then Ethernet, oops, sorry, Ethernet 50 to 3. And let's hope we don't have to type that in again. So we're going to shut these ports down. And these are the ports where you would turn around and say, storm control. And is there no storm control here? Huh. It looks like IOU does not have the storm control command. Interesting. So it's maybe just this exercise doesn't have it, because I'm almost positive we did an exercise with storm control before. I may be confusing that with a Netacad lab, but interesting that it's not here. So we'll say shut down. We would throw those storm control commands on here, but then we would say switch port access VLAN 199. Do show VLAN brief. And remember, it's shut L shut, and now it has quite a few ports in the parking lot, right? And these are all of the ports that are open, right? There's nothing connected to them right now, but that we could go ahead and if someone plugs something in, they're not going to get access to anything because they're plugging into a VLAN. Even if they said no shut, it's a VLAN that is suspended or shut down, right? So the last thing we've got is HTTP. So let's say do show run include HTTP. So this has no IP HTTP server. I also like to use no IP HTTPS, and they don't actually have that on here. Or no IP, is it secure server? No, that's not it. Give me a second here. I'm trying to recall off the top of my head what that command is. So if I were to go into global config, it's no IP. I thought it was HTTPS. No IP secure server? Or HTTP secure, sorry. HTTP secure. That's not it. Server secure? No. No secure. That's not it. I'm drawing a complete blank here. No IP HTTP. HTTP. Oh, secure server. There it is. I looked right by it. Secure server. So that's what we're looking for. No IP HTTP secure server. And that's what we want here. So no IP HTTP. And unfortunately, secure server is not here. Right, but that to do it, you would just say no IP HTTP secure server, because basically it's just going to turn HTTP and HTTPS off, because you want to make sure that you don't allow web access for whatever reason, that you're doing things on the command line. All right, so no IP. Let's check out the other devices here. Let's see router 1, and this is pretty much going to wrap it up. Show run, include HTTP, and that's interesting that they have it there. Huh. Kind of ironic that they have it shut down here, but we don't have access to that command here. Or is it server secure here? What is this? No, that's not it. That's really funny. So on the router, that command is there. No IP HTTP secure server. On the switch, we can't do it. Let's check this one here. No IP HTTP server. No IP HTTP. Yeah, it's not there. It's so interesting. Okay. So we've got that done there. And then finally, we're going to do it on DSW1. It might actually already be done. Do show run, include HTTP. And we want to say no IP HTTP server and no IP HTTP secure server. But that doesn't exist, unfortunately. So ironic that it's on the router image, but not the switch image. And so let's actually, before we go, let's confirm that. Let's make sure that that is not true. Global config, it should not be true. IP HTTP server. Secure server. Yeah, so that command does exist on the switching platform. So just not in our IOU. All right. Well, this is it. This is the final challenge activity of the semester. Challenge activity number 17. We took a look at a lot of stuff with relationship to just hardening your switch. Again, not all-encompassing, but certainly from the port security perspective and for unused ports, what you would want to do in order to really lock that port down to make sure that you've got defense in depth on that port from somebody, you know, either intentionally or unintentionally getting onto a port or onto a switch and then trying to circumvent your change control so that you've got some sort of mechanism in place to make sure that things are being done in an orderly and well advertised and communicated fashion. All right, guys, this is it. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. I will see you on Monday night.